Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining for this topic today. My name is Schafer Boeder. I'm an endocrinologist at UC San Diego, where I work with Steve Edelman. And today I'm going to be talking about continuous glucose monitoring, or CGM, in type 2 diabetes. And this is an area of interest of mine, and also an area that's really grown a lot in the past few years and will continue to grow for the foreseeable future as these technologies have improved and become more widely available. So it's something that I think we're going to see more and more with in the future. So the goals today are really to kind of give some background on what continuous glucose monitoring is, and also give some information about the different types of CGM that are available on the market, and also to talk about the benefits of CGM. Why, if you have type 2 diabetes and you're not using a CGM, should you think about using a CGM? Is there something that might benefit you? And how this technology can actually help you in controlling your diabetes. So first off, the technology has improved drastically over the years in terms of ways to monitor and test, your own blood sugar at home. And it used to be, back in the day, you'd have to do this huge science experiment just to find out what the urine level was in the glucose level was in your urine, no less in your blood. As glucose meters sort of came about, that was a major improvement. And over time, those have gotten better and better, more accurate, faster, needing less blood, all of that type of things. So, this has kind of been, for many decades now, these glucose meters have been sort of our standard of care to figure out, what's going on with blood sugar at home. But of course, you have to prick your finger, and there are many other limitations involved with these that we're going to talk about some today. And ultimately, over the last couple decades, and really especially over the last decade or 5 years, the CGM, or continuous glucose monitor technology, has become better and better to the point where it's really been adapted and usable for many different patients in clinic in the real world. And so as we've seen that these technologies have improved, we're seeing them being used more. So just to give you sort of a little bit of background on why CGM is so important and what it can add. So if we think that there's 1,440 minutes per day, which there is, and each of those minutes throughout the day, your blood glucose is changing. It's going up, it's going down, it may be going up fast, it may be going up slow, but it's changing. That's how our body works. And if you're using a glucose meter and you're doing finger stick checks, you're poking your finger. Let's say you do that 6 times a day, which in my opinion is quite a lot. Some people do more, but 6 times a day is a lot. So if you're doing it 6 times a day with your glucose meter, you're only capturing 0.4% of the day in terms of how much glucose you know what's going on with your blood sugar. And the rest of the day, you don't know. Okay, so we're missing a lot of information, essentially. So what is a continuous glucose monitor? Well, kind of the name is somewhat self-descriptive. It's a device that will be continuously monitoring your glucose, right? But how does it work? So this is sort of what a typical CGM system looks like. And so it begins with basically a glucose sensor. And this sensor is a sort of a zoomed in, blown up version of it. So it's not really this big, but this little sensor is like this little tiny wire, this little filament that's actually inserted right under the skin. It sits under the skin in that space. And it's the thing that's actually measuring the glucose. And depending on the CGM, that measurement happens every 1 minute to every 5 minutes, or up to every 15 minutes. Then there's a wireless transmitter that's attached to the sensor, or included in the sensor sometimes. So in this case, it's this gray piece that's sort of clipped on. All the rest of this plastic and this gray transmitter is outside of the body. It's outside of the skin, just sitting on it. And this transmitter is sending glucose measurements to some type of receiver. And that could be a standalone device, that basically stores and processes and collects this data, this glucose information, or it can be just an app on a smartphone. So increasingly, we're seeing use of smartphone apps for that purpose. And really, ultimately, the CGM provides way more information than your A1C number can, or your glucose meter can. Okay, so it gives us continuous glucose data, of course. And what do we use that for? Well, if you're a person with diabetes, you can use that information to support your decision making, right? So helping you decide, changes to your diet, things that maybe you've eaten, and see how they affect your blood sugar. You can see what exercise does to your blood sugar. You can use them for medication dosing, especially if you're taking insulin or something like that, where you can be adjusting the dose based on your blood sugars. So it's really giving you the information to empower you to make decisions. There's more information with these, and we're going to get into some of these details, but there's something called glucose trend arrows on the CGM. And what that is basically, it shows which direction your glucose is heading. Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it staying pretty flat? And so again, it's adding more information. Importantly, many CGM also have alerts and alarms for high and low glucose values. And I think, again, this is important because especially if you've had low blood sugars, if you've ever had a low blood sugar, or if you're on insulin or other medications that can cause low blood sugars, this can be a major safety issue. And so having an alert or alarm that can help, let you know if you're starting to go low, you can prevent some of those problems. And the same for high blood sugars. If you want to know, hey, my blood sugar is 200 or it's 300, you can set that alert so that you have some idea if your blood sugars are getting too high. Then there's also options for sharing with friends and family, loved ones, caregivers, whatever it may be, so that other people can also have some of this information if you want someone to kind of be your buddy and look out for you. And then finally, the CGMs allow for glycemic reports. So all this continuous glucose data is basically downloaded and put in a report form. And initially, these reports were kind of put together for the healthcare provider to see so that they can look at all the stuff that's going on and make use of all that information to help you, adjust your medications, change your diet, whatever it may be. But increasingly, these are being utilized, these reports are being utilized by patients to actually look at your own glucose information and use that. And I think that's really important. So I encourage people to do that. Okay, so let's talk about the A1C. Now, I'm going to show you a little chart that includes 3 different people, glucose information from 3 different people who all have the exact same A1C of 7%, right? And 7% is a good A1C. So all these people have if we just saw their A1C, it's the exact same, and it's 7%. Now, just to get you oriented to this graph, so this is kind of what a continuous glucose monitor might show over a 24-hour period, like a full day, 24 hours, right? So each of these, lines, these squiggles represents the blood glucose of one of these 3 people. So, we see over here, this is 12 a.m. So this is basically midnight. That's the start of the day, the 24-hour day. And then here's 12 noon. And then the next 12 hours gets you back to midnight, right? So it's a 24-hour day. And if you look at person number 1 here in the black line, you can see that their blood sugar is kind of all over the place. It goes high, it gets super high up here, like 300 maybe. And then they have this really low blood sugar way down here in the red zone. And then it goes back up. Maybe they were low and they ate a bunch of food to get out of that. And then they went super high again. So this person is just on a roller coaster, high blood sugars, low blood sugars. But their A1C average is 7. So there's the A1C 7, their average blood sugar is right here in the green area, even though they're having highs and lows. So contrast that with the person in green who has the exact same average blood sugar and the same A1C, but they have a much smoother day, right? An easier day and better blood sugars. And so that, we'd all rather be person number 3 than person number 1. And without continuous glucose monitor data, it's hard to know which of these people you are, right? So this is the information that we can get from a CGM that we can't get from an A1C. And this kind of shows the same thing, but with just a little bit different outlook. Same people, person 1, person 2, person 3. And it shows, how much percent of their time each individual is spending in the target ranges. And the green is the good range. That's basically a blood sugar between 70 and 180. That's what we call time in range. And that's kind of our goal, is to be in that range as much as possible. The red is low, and we want to avoid red. We want to avoid those low blood sugars. They can be dangerous. They're really hard on the heart. They're bad on the body. And then in this case, the yellow are the higher blood sugars. So anything above, in this case, this example, anything above 180, right? So same A1C, completely different glucose control amongst these 3 people. And we can tell from the CGM. So let's talk about trend arrows, right? I mentioned them before. And really, this is a situation where more information is better. And I truly believe that. So what a trend arrow, these are examples of trend arrows on 2 different CGM devices. And you can see that here in the middle, there's, this person checked their blood sugar on the CGM. The blood sugar is 112. And they have a little trend arrow here, and this arrow is pointed up at a diagonal, okay? And that means that their blood sugar currently is 112, but it's kind of slowly increasing. So it's slowly going up a little bit. This person over here, same idea. This person's blood sugar is 202, but with sort of a diagonal arrow here. So this trend arrow, same thing, kind of slowly increasing blood sugar. So it gives you that idea of not only what your blood sugar is now, but where is it headed? Right? So where's the glucose going? That's what we want to know from trend arrows. And these are just some examples from this device, which is the Dexcom CGM. It's one of the brands. And you know, you can have a flat trend arrow, which means that your blood sugar is pretty constant. It's not really going up or down. You can have, you know, slowly increasing. You can have a straight up arrow, which means it's increasing faster. You can have a double up arrow, which means it's really shooting up, okay? And you can have all those same arrows going down, right? So if you have two down arrows, then your glucose is dropping super fast, right? So you can use that information to decide what you might need to do. And the reason is because, you know, if you're checking with just a glucose meter, you know, all glucometer readings are not created equal. And that's because they don't really tell us the trend of the glucose. They just give you one number at that moment in time, okay? And so this is an example. This is somebody who, you know, was wearing a continuous glucose monitor, but was also using their glucose meter to do some checks. Now on the CGM, so here they had breakfast, right? And you can see that after breakfast, based on the CGM tracing here, this black line, their blood sugar went up, and then it came back down. You know, maybe they took some insulin or their other medications, and after breakfast, it eventually came back down, and it actually kind of dipped a little bit low and then came back to normal. So that's what the CGM would show us. Now, if they weren't wearing the CGM and they were only doing the glucose checks, what would they know? Well, they could check here, and the blood sugar would be 150, right? But they would not know that the blood sugar is actually going up. They could check here, and it would also be 150, but it's the opposite scenario. So in this case, the blood sugar is actually falling, and it's falling pretty quick, right? They're headed actually to a low. So here's a situation where, you know, the exact same number on the glucose meter, 150, doesn't mean the same thing. Okay, another example. Here we have a blood glucose meter showing 220. Okay, so that's maybe, you know, a little on the high side. What do we do with that information? Well, if we had a CGM, we would know more. So here's a CGM showing a blood glucose of 220 with two up arrows, right? So it's 220 currently, but it's shooting up. That blood sugar is increasing, okay? Here's the other scenario. Blood sugar is 220, but it's falling really quickly. There's two down arrows, okay? And you might treat this differently. You might act differently if you saw these up or down arrows. So if this, you know, in this case, if the blood sugar is 220 and going up, you might want to do something. You know, you might want to go for a walk to try to bring that blood sugar down. If you're someone who takes insulin, this might be a time to take some insulin. In this case, if it's 220 but it's coming down quick, you know, you might not need to treat it at all. Maybe you just want to watch it and make sure you don't have a low blood sugar. So you're going to keep an eye on it maybe, but your intervention would be different. You know, you wouldn't want to take a big bolus of insulin or something like that in this case. Okay, another important feature of CGM are alerts and alarms. And you know, here are some of the brand names, some of the different companies out there that make CGM. And I'll talk more about these specifically later, but we have Dexcom, Medtronic, and Eversense. And all three of these CGM currently on the market all include alerts and alarms. There's another company that's really important to know about. It's Freestyle Libre. That's the brand name of their CGM. And it's from Abbott. So the Freestyle Libre, the current version, does not include alerts and alarms, but the version that's coming out very soon is called the Freestyle Libre 2, is the updated version, will have these alerts and alarms as well. So what's the point of having the alerts and alarms? Like I said, you know, you're going to want to know, you can set them to see if your blood sugar is getting very high or if it's starting to go low. And I think at the very least, you should have a low alert because you don't want to have low blood sugars. They can be very dangerous. And if you've ever had one, they're also extremely uncomfortable. They're unpleasant. So in this case, you know, back to the same person who had breakfast, you know, and then we see that the blood sugar came back down. It came roaring down actually, and it ended up in this low level down here. The blood sugar is probably like 60. Now, once they started feeling that low blood sugar, you know, then they checked, they basically checked this blood sugar and then they said, oh crap, I'm, you know, 70, my blood sugar feels like it's falling. I got to treat it. I got to drink juice. and then they got their blood sugar to come back up. But this is a situation where this low maybe could have been prevented with a CGM that included an alert, because you could set that alert at, let's say, 80, or you could set it even at 100, depending on your personal preference, so that as your blood sugar is falling, it'll let you know, hey, your blood sugar is 80 and it's on the way down. So maybe you want to eat something or treat it before it actually goes low. And so it's an opportunity to prevent low blood sugars. And for that reason, I feel that alerts and alarms are really important, and they should be used. I also mentioned you can share data with friends and family. So, if you have a CGM on a child, that's a great, thing to do, is share it so you can kind of track and follow those blood sugars. But it works great also for other loved ones. So if you're a person with diabetes, you have a CGM you want to share with your spouse or your friend, or someone that you know with diabetes, to just share with them, to so they know what's going on, but also to have another set of eyes in case you have highs or lows or problems like that. And it's a good idea. Okay. So the last thing I was talking about was looking at your glycemic report to learn about your own glucose data. And so I just wanted to introduce this idea and kind of show you what some of these glucose reports look like, so that if you have a CGM, you can actually download these and make sense of your own information. So this is from the Libre view. It's from the Freestyle Libre report, but they all have these sort of similar outlines with the same type of information. And this person, this is the 14-day download. So basically, this is 14 days worth of data. So continuous glucose data all combined onto this one page. And the average glucose for this individual over 14 days was 148, which is quite good, right? So that should be an A1C right around 7, or maybe even a little bit lower. It shows the time in range, right? So our goal target here in blue is between 70 and 180. So this person was in that range 67% of the time, which is pretty good. Our general target is above 70, but this is quite close. They are having some low blood sugars, less than 70. So this would be the first thing actually I would work on trying to fix, figuring out, hey, when and where are these low blood sugars happening? What can we do to prevent them? Okay. And then lastly, this coefficient of variation and standard deviation. These are different measurements of glycemic variability, so fluctuations between highs and lows. So with both of these numbers, lower is better. So that would mean less variability. But in general, if you're looking just at the coefficient of variation, if you have this at 30 or less, then you're doing very good. This is another part of the report and this is called the ambulatory glucose profile. So again, this is another one of those 24-hour days, right? Starting at midnight, and then here's 12 noon, and then here's midnight again. And this little graph shows all of this person's 14 days of glucose data in one place. So it's kind of all combined onto here, so you can see what the glucose numbers are doing throughout the day, sort of on average. And this dark blue line in the middle is the average blood glucose at every time point throughout the day over that 14-day period. And then, this gray or sort of, light blue area that goes above and below that line shows the glycemic or glucose variability. So the kind of range of highs and lows that happen throughout that time point, So if you're looking at this person, the first thing that I would look at actually is the low blood sugars, because I said, hey, this is something we need to worry about. And so in this person, you can see that they're having these blood sugars less than 70 in the early morning. And there's a good chance that this person is asleep during this time, and maybe without alerts or alarms might not even know these are happening. So the blood sugar here around 2 a.m. is some days is dipping below 70, down to 60s and 50s. And sometimes that's going on between 2 a.m. until about 7 in the morning. So this is the first thing I would try to figure out. Hey, what's going on? Is this, from insulin or a different, glucose agent, the anti-diabetes medication? What is it? And then we also can see, the next thing I would see is that, hey, during the day, the blood sugar looks really good. And then in the evening around 6 p.m., maybe this is dinner time, things start to get a little wonky, and you see this glucose variability, high blood sugars, lower blood sugars, kind of all over the place. And that carries into the nighttime, so that when midnight comes around, this person's starting off pretty high, but their blood sugar is dropping, and it ends up in this low period. So anyway, it gives you an idea about what's going on in a simple snapshot. So I encourage you to look at these. What about what actual CGM devices are available right now, and what's coming in the relatively near future? And that depends, of course, on the company, but it could be sometime this year, sometime in the next year or two. Currently available is the Freestyle Libre, which I mentioned before. And I really do think this is a great option for a lot of people with type 2 diabetes. Okay, this is a sensor that's worn. You may have seen these, commercials or friends or people that have these. This sensor is worn generally on the back of the arm, and it's worn for 14 days. It has a 1 hour warm up. It's really easy to put on. Anytime you want to know your blood sugar, you take the reader or your smartphone if you have the app, and you just swipe it over that section. You literally take it and physically go boop, right over it, and it'll tell you what your blood sugar is right at that moment. Okay, and it'll also download the trend of your blood sugar for the previous 8 hours. So you have all that information downloaded when you swipe it, and it'll also give you the trend arrow. Okay, so there's a lot of information from a simple swipe. And you don't have to do finger sticks to calibrate this device, which is great. That's a huge plus. So, really people who are using this devices, you can check your blood sugar as many times as you want all day long, and basically almost never have to check your blood sugar with a finger stick. It's always good to have that finger stick or your glucose meter available, if you want to double check it, if you're not sure if the CGM is working correctly, or just to, check the accuracy. But really, this is replacing finger sticks for you. The problem with the current Freestyle Libre is there's no alerts or alarms, which I talked about before. But thankfully, Abbott is going to fix that. So the recently approved Freestyle Libre 2, this was approved literally like days ago, this June. It basically adds Bluetooth connectivity to this device. And so that will allow for this data to be continuously sent to either the receiver, which is there in blue, or your smartphone app. And you can turn on high and low glucose alerts if you want to. And again, hey, if you have this, I very much recommend you turn those alerts on, especially the low glucose alerts. Somewhere around 80 or 90 maybe would be a good place to start. But it's going to be an upgrade from the current Freestyle Libre, this Libre 2. And there's also improved accuracy. So look for this device. This one hopefully will be coming out quite soon. Another company that makes CGMs is Medtronic. This is their CGM. It's called the Guardian 3. This is their current CGM. Their sensor is worn for 7 days, so it's not as long of a life as the Freestyle Libre. And the insertion is a little bit more complex. It has a 2-hour warm-up period. And this can be a sort of a standalone CGM where you're just getting the information, or for people who have an insulin pump, it can also send it to that. And this is another good device that includes, trend arrows. Unfortunately, this CGM does require currently calibrations, so you still have to do some finger sticks, like between at least 2 times a day to keep it calibrated, and the accuracy actually improves with more finger sticks. So if you're doing it 3 or 4 times a day, the accuracy is better. So this is one drawback of this specific device, but it does have alerts, alarms, the ability to share with people all these features. The Medtronic's next CGM, sort of called right now Project Zeus. It's not yet approved. It's something that they're studying right now and will be out at some point in the future. And this next CGM sensor will have improved accuracy and reduced finger stick calibrations. I think their goal is to basically so you only have to calibrate the device on the very first day you put it on, and then after that you won't need to. So that's coming down the line. Another really important sort of player in this field is Dexcom. They're one of the most well-known CGM makers. Their current sensor is worn for 10 days at a time. It's really easy to put on. It has it has a 2-hour warm-up period. And again, it sends this information to either a smartphone or a standalone receiver, including trend arrows. The Dexcom CGM does not require any calibration, just like the Freestyle Libre. So you don't have to do any finger stick checks at all to have this thing up and running and keep it accurate. Okay, so that's a major benefit, I would say, of Dexcom and the Freestyle Libre. The Dexcom does have alerts and alarms and sharing and all that stuff. So it's kind of, in my opinion, it's probably the most advanced and has all of the features. But it may be more features than some people need. And in that case, the Freestyle Libre might be the best option. Dexcom, their next CGM sensor we're calling G7 is kind of the next generation. It's not yet approved, but it's being studied. This one is designed to be fully disposable, have a much slimmer profile. So you can kind of see in this picture, this is the size of the current one, and this is the one that they're working on. It'll have a longer wear time and a really easy application onto the skin. So looking forward to the Dexcom G7 at some point down the line. And then lastly, but not least, is the Sensionix Eversense. This is an implantable CGM, so it's a little bit different. this sensor is actually implanted in a very simple in-office procedure right under the skin in the arm, and that lasts for up to 90 days under the skin. It just kind of sits under there. And then you wear this little transmitter with a patch, like a little sticky patch right on the skin over that, and you can take that on and off whenever you want to. And then that sends the information to a mobile app on your smartphone. So you can get all the same sort of benefits of the CGM, but just a little bit of a different approach where you're not having to change out sensors every 7 to 14 days. That little sensor just stays under the skin for up to 90 days. Next from Sensionix is the Eversense XL. And the XL is not for extra large, it's for extended life. And so this version of the Sensionix sensor will be implanted and it'll stay in there for 180 days. So for half of a year, 6 months, it'll just stay under the skin and be able to provide that continuous glucose information. It's the same size and everything else is the same as the original Eversense. This XL version is actually already approved in Europe, so they're working on approval here in the United States as well. Okay, so in closing, benefits of CGM use, why is this something to think about using if you have type 2 diabetes? Well, it can improve your A1C and it can improve your time in range. So that's that really good glucose that we like between 70 and 180 is sort of the normal definition of time in range. So we want to improve the amount of time you're spending in that range. And certainly it can help decrease hypoglycemia. So if you're someone who has low blood sugars or has had low blood sugars, a CGM is probably perhaps the most important piece of technology that can help with those. And ultimately, the goal of this CGM technology is not to give you more work or to have something else to carry around or deal with. It's actually to help you worry less about diabetes and make your life easier. And when people start using these, I think that's in general what they find. They find that, hey, these devices are easy to use. They help, they reduce the amount of time you have to do finger stick, and they let you just know what's going on. So you can really, make healthy decisions and take control of your diabetes. So this is one of the best tools to do exactly that. So with that, we'll close up. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I urge you to stay healthy, stay kind, and take care. Thank you.